dealing with like the top 10, 20% of women in terms of because I'd imagine if they're in New York modeling, they're probably top, would you say
Yeah,
20% of beauty in the world,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's like those are the women that have so much sexual agency and sexual power, so much more than the average chick. So it must have been interesting to see like what they did with it. Like, would you say that those women, when selecting like boyfriends, did they typically select like good boyfriends? Did they sleep around? Like, what did they do with? Does that question make sense with all that like power in a way?
Yeah. Um, I think a lot of men, and just for the record, uh, you know, you could just so you know, I'm not lying. Like you could go on New York Post, New York Daily News, and see that in around 2012, 2013, I had a Monday night party,
Okay.
and that was peak because that was a party where the supermodels, Victoria's Secret models, Hollywood celebrities, billionaires would actually come. It
Hmm.
was known as the top party in that New York, in that period.
Hmm.
I didn't keep it for long. The nightclub ended up closing. But just to get to that point is top of the pyramid of New York nightlife. That's very hard to get to. So I was able to see a lot. And one thing I saw was how some men could be so good at making money.
But bad with women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would see it over and over and over and over and over again to the point where I was mystified at, hey, man, I wish back then I didn't make much money, bro. So I thought, how can this guy, and these are not necessarily all dorks. You know what I'm saying? Dorks. I don't like to call anybody a dork, but just a dorky character.
Right.
Okay. Uh, and he was very good at making money. And, he had the material items, but with the women, he was a complete idiot. Like it was like that part of his brain didn't work. It was sort of like a guy that's great with computers, but he doesn't have sales ability, or a guy who's great with sales, but he can't cook. He can't fix a tire if it goes flat. He can't put furniture together, but he's a great salesman. He doesn't know how to fix the computer.
Those guys, so would they be sexless or would it be more like they just couldn't keep women?
I think a lot of them would struggle. I
Okay.
think a lot of them would struggle to get women. I think a lot of them would become bitter that, you know, that they would get played. And I think a lot of them, I think it's hard for a lot of these guys, to be honest, because I think that they face the most viciousness when they're out at New York City nightclubs. It's tough to get women. It's also easy to get women because there's a lot of women, but it's also nasty. It's cold. And
Mhm.
I would approach women at a casting. So that's like 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, on Spring Street in Soho. Their models coming out for like 2 hours. I'm going up to them, like talking to them, or right there in the street. And I'm about 6'3" guy. I'm Middle Eastern. I'm a dark guy. These
Right.
girls are coming from like Russia. They're coming from like Poland, Ukraine. They've never seen a dark man like me before. And the ones they have were the ladies guys that take the women and go to Eastern Europe. They have a name for that. And I'm not going to say it, but so they may have viewed that I was trying to do something like that. There was that stereotype of men like me. So I'm approaching them right in the street. There's no music, there's no ambiance. And I would have to be able to get their phone number, and then invite them out to a nightclub. Then I'd go pick them up with like a car, take them out to a nice dinner. The best restaurants would a lot of the best restaurants would comp us and take them out. So imagine the power of going up with like models from IMG, Ford, Next in New York. That's high caliber models. New York and Paris. These are girls that modeled in Paris, London, New York, Milano, Tokyo. And you go to the nightclub and then you see a table, they would put me right next to another table, $5, $10, $15,000 table.
Mm.
Bottle service, guys spending money. That guy spends $15,000 and the girl won't even look at him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like,
So they would get attention from women, but it would be very like the girls were kind of using them basically. The guys that were like bad with chicks anyways.
but this gets even. There's even another facet. There's so many there's
Okay.
dimensions to this. So
Okay.
the Brazilian models. These are all this is generalizations. First of all,
I mean, you have to.
Yeah,
You can't have a conversation about anything
Yeah,
without
yeah.
generalization.
Yeah, well, it's because it's fascinating because like
Everyone gets mad over them. Oh, you can't generalize. Well, you can.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the Brazilian models
Okay.
would have tension with the Russian models, and like if they would have these model apartments where maybe there's one part of them a Russian, one part of them a Brazilian. It's not always exactly like this, but this is a general idea. And what I noticed was that the Brazilian models in general were much more easygoing, relaxed,
Mhm.
more open, whereas the Eastern European models were more traditional. They didn't give a shit how a man looked. They cared way more
About money.
about money.
Okay.
But they were also in that way, like, treat me like a woman. You're going to do this, 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 and this for me.
Mhm.
But in return, I will do X, Y, and Z for you. And okay with being a traditional woman and being submissive. And I thought that was more honest than someone that would, even if I didn't like it, I think that that's more honest than saying, I do want X, Y, and Z. But when it suits me, I also want this.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm happy to, have these benefits of being independent, but then when the tab comes, I want you to pay.
I'm
Which one is it?
I'm curious. Did they end up getting married? Like, I'm just curious. Like the women, because you're how old?
I'm 42.
So you're 42. So I'd
Yeah.
imagine, how old were you when you were doing this?
Man, I was like in my 20s, early
Okay.
30s.
Okay,
20s.
so now
Yeah.
you can kind of see like what happened to them, like if it ended up good or bad. So I'm just curious, do women in the top 20% of beauty tend to get married or do they waste their beauty?
I would find that a lot of the fashion models that would come out
Hmm.
to the nightclubs, after 2, 3 years, a lot of them drop off. And I think that what happens is a lot of them settle down.
Okay.
I do think a lot of them would settle down. I think when you're in your early 20s, that's just you're raging, Like me in my 20s, working 5 nights a week, throwing parties,
Right.
it was impossible for me to settle down until my late 30s. So when I see young men talk about going out, being with women, I get it. Do I think it's degenerate? Yeah, but I'd be a hypocrite if I attacked them for sleeping around with a bunch of women, not being in a relationship. Um, I've become a traditional man because
You became a traditional man.
yeah, I'm 42 years old.
Okay.
I do believe in a monogamous relationship. I am against adultery. I never make jokes about adultery or that I'm a homosexual
Hmm.
because I think I would never make a joke that I'm a homosexual or that I cheat on my wife
Hmm.
because that's my daughter. Because how my daughter one day will get older,
Hmm.
and I don't want my daughter to ever say to me, "Why'd you cheat on mom?" My daughter is the most precious thing to me in my life.
Hmm.
And my relationship with my wife is the most important relationship in my life.
Hmm.
I put her front and center. But my wife is traditional. She's a teacher by training. She's a college graduate. She's a teacher by training. Her mother's traditional.
Hmm.
Her grandma, in German they call it Oma, she was traditional. Her sister's traditional. Where I live in Germany, where I have a home, it's traditional women. And these are women that are great at keeping the home organized, cleanliness, preparing meals, and they're happy this way. This is what's crazy to people in the United States. Maybe if you live in a small city, and by the way, my wife is not from New York. I didn't meet her in a New York nightclub. She's from a small city, and even within the small city, in the most rural part of that small city, we got cows, horses, and pigs in my neighborhood in Germany, where I have my home. So over there, the women, it's almost a cultural norm in that part of Germany to be married, have one man, you're cooking, cleaning, and it's not outrageous to say it. They actually want to do it, and they take pride in it. But the man works, he takes care of it. And from my wife, her mom, her grandma, her older sister, her cousins, her aunt, she has so many examples, and that's actually a pretty well balanced lifestyle.
Yeah, well, and what I realized
Yeah.
is like we have a whole generation, especially in the West, a whole generation of like people that don't know how to be wives or husbands, honestly, for that matter. But and I realized it's because women lead most relationships. So most people, if they've seen their parents are together, the mom probably led the relationship, not the man. Because of I think the way that the contract the I think it's because of the way marriage is like the contract is in the US where like women are basically rewarded for leaving. So the guy's always going to be trying to make the girl happy. And we have a whole generation of women that have worked. So like how are you going to have traditional skills if you're working?
Yeah.
And then I mean, I didn't even scratch with like single mother homes, right? So it's like how would we know how to be wives and mothers if we've never seen it?
It's interesting. You really, wow. Wow. You know what? It's interesting you say this about single mothers because for a while, I lived with my mother and my parents split.
Hmm.
And I think one reason a lot of men sleep around with women is, and this is something that's not really talked about, a lot, is that men also have issues with their mother, the way some women have issues, with their father,
Oh yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah.
Like there was you know, a lot of men, yeah. So a lot of people look at me and they assume that, I got a lot of pussy in my past, and they would be right.
Okay.
So my friend once said to me, Alpha Nima, how would you, how would your mother feel if she knew how awfully you treat women? And I said to him, I looked at him, and I said, I don't give a shit what she thinks about me, because that woman, it felt like she never really gave a fuck about me. And, you know, the one thing she was good for was the milk and her titties. And that's actually Alpha King rule number 88. If you want to build strong men when they grow up who treat their women like queens, set a good, loving example for them when they're young.
Hmm. Well, and the other thing is, because a lot of times women will complain about the way men treat them, but it's like traditional women don't typically have a problem getting traditional men.
You know, the thing is that you said to me, why was I became traditional? You
What?
said to me earlier, I became traditional. You're right. I became traditional.
Okay.
You're right. I became traditional.
Yeah, I think it's learn. You can learn
I,
it.
yeah, but one reason I wasn't traditional was because when I was working in the nightclubs, bringing out all these women, it wasn't until after I became traditional that I realized perhaps it was a sex addiction, that I was sleeping around with so many women. And it wasn't until my 40s that I start confronting the fact that, hey, maybe in my 20s and 30s, I didn't get that love from my mother, you know? And then I was fucking a lot of women,
Hmm.
but there was something missing, you know? Maybe that's why I spent so much time in New York City nightclubs. I was just fanatical about getting pussy, constant, and that's, there's something dirt. You lose it. My friend said this to me. My friend, and I'm not gonna say who he is, but well-known guy. He said to me, he said every woman, and he said every woman you sleep with, it's like you're losing a piece of yourself. And I thought it was towards before I met my wife in my late 30s, but it was around that point where I was like, it hit me. It was the right word at the right point in my life. It's hard if you're a man and your mother is cold to you. That's some fuck that's some it hits your heart. Now some guys, the guys who have mothers like that, and the mother loves them, but the guys that have gone through that, I would imagine that they would understand what I'm saying. The same way a girl
Yeah.
whose father ignores her. Fuck, can you imagine that? I love my daughter. I couldn't even imagine if I just deserted her. Like, how could she feel about, man? So when I see a woman act like a whore, now, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about before,
Right.
when I was King's age, when I was these other guys' age, No, no. When I was young, if I saw a woman act like a whore, I might have been like, all right, cool, let's have fun. Because I was also a whore. I was also promiscuous. But now as a father with a daughter, I think, fuck, when she was a baby,
Mhm.
her father deserted her. You said something to me, Pearl. You said, I moved before. You said, I don't mean to blow you up,
Oh,
right?
no, you're okay. You're okay.
You said something to me that I understood your father without knowing your father.
Hmm.
You said to me, I went back to living at home
Hmm.
with my parents,
Yeah.
right? And then you said your feelings, your mom's sentiment, but then you said, my dad was so happy.
Yeah.
I understood that because I'm already looking forward to tomorrow when I get back to Germany, my daughter being there at the airport. And I've only been gone a week, but I miss her, miss my
Yeah.
wife. And the point I want to make is that feeling of when you go back later next month or this month
Hmm.
to go back to Chicago and meet your dad, he's going to be so happy to see you. I know that feeling because I also have a daughter. You don't know what it feels like to be a man and have a daughter. I do. It's impossible for you to understand that as a man. As a father, you'll never be a man or a father. I am both. He will be so happy to see you the same way I'm going to be happy when I see my daughter tomorrow. Because you imagine if you didn't have a father there tomorrow, next week, 3 weeks from now, when you go back to the United States to pick you up, he didn't give a shit about.
Well, and it's
Could you
also,
imagine?
yeah, I mean, it's also like when you're close with your dad, you like even me, I quit like drinking a couple years ago, and part of it was because of my dad, because my dad doesn't drink at all. And so it's like, I don't know, you just kind of do things to like make your dad happy because it's like if you don't want him to be disappointed, you know?
I
So,
mean, just look how happy you were. Well, it wasn't being recorded, but even when it wasn't being recorded,
mm,
how happy you were when you were elated when you said, "Oh, my father, he was really happy though when I came back."
yeah. Yeah,
Right?
he was.
Right? Like he
Yeah.
was, but but
Yeah.
but but see how happy you were. He was happy, and then you were happy
Right.
because you feel that you are accepted, you feel loved, you feel welcomed.
Hmm.
You felt welcomed, accepted, embraced.
Hmm.
You felt safe to go back home.
Hmm.
Like not just you could go back, but you genuinely felt warm and welcomed. You felt a warm welcome. Imagine if you didn't have a father
You
that
know,
did that.
you know what I noticed when you're talking about like mommy issues?
Yeah.
Well, I can hear it in a guy's voice if he doesn't grow up without a dad a lot of times. It's not 100%,
Yeah.
but I don't really know. I can't really describe why. I can just like tell. Usually they have a slightly like higher tonality and they kind of speak like a woman. They use like a
Yeah.
lot of hands when they talk. Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just certain like mannerisms you kind of pick up on, especially when they're younger guys, especially. But one thing I noticed was that a lot of times when guys have a visceral reaction to like defend promiscuity or defend like single mothers because in the red pill space you'll say like don't date single mothers, don't date just basic stuff. And I'm like, why do I get this visceral reaction from the men? Like they should agree with like there's a group of men that just should agree on this stuff. But what I realized is that they're defending their moms, a lot of them, because that's who
It's true.
raised them. Yeah,
No,
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I cut
No,
you
go
off.
no, good. That was it. Go ahead.
No, it's like anyone can fact check me. Like out of respect for my wife, I don't put my ex-girlfriends who are in Vogue magazine. But if you were to go on Google and put my name and go Google images, you will see at least two of my ex-girlfriends who are in Vogue magazine. I was here in London. I lived in London for a little less than 2 months because my ex-girlfriend was modeling in London.
Mhm.
So that's my resume in understanding women. I literally threw parties bringing a lot of fashion models. That's hard. Imagine getting one fashion model. Imagine getting 8. I had to, and I'm not Brad Pitt.
Mhm.
So I'm not Johnny Depp. I'm not GQ model. So I wasn't rich. So I really had to figure out how to talk to women to be able to get women to come out. I have nothing to prove. And I'm also a happily married man and I love my daughter. I'm a loyal man to my wife. So I talk about the game, like a lot of my Alpha King rules and stuff like that. That's me when I was a bachelor. Now I'm in my 40s, but I still live that lifestyle. And when I see men, some of this stuff, Pearl, it is immaturity. Also, some of the men that talk a certain way, and women, some of it is just maturity. It's not. I also said stuff in my 20s, and you know what I mean, or I also said stuff that I might not feel now today. You know, some of the guys maybe they didn't get love from their mom, and they're also not getting love in the nightclub. They're also not getting love from the girl in their college. They're just not getting love in general from a woman. No wonder they're fucking bitter, right? Or the guy, or the girl. Her dad doesn't give a shit about her. She goes to the nightclub. She gets drunk. She gets fucked. He doesn't call her anymore, or he just tells her, "Hey, come over." That's it. Just come over. Come on. She wanted. You think during the holiday, during her birthday, she didn't wish she had a father or a boyfriend? She's suffering. She's struggling. You know. Same with the dude. I had a great relationship with my dad. He's a very traditional man. My dad, to this day, it's crazy. Like, I went out with my wife and this lady that he's with. My dad's a little bit of a playboy now, but he's traditional in the sense of when we went out, he refused to let me pay. He refuses to let me pay for meals when he's with a woman. He's traditional in that way, you know? So I had a great relationship with my dad. I do. With my mom, I love her so much, but I also have accepted for some people in your life, it's okay to love some people from a distance. Maybe I know my mother loves me. I love her. But I think we've both realized it's okay to love each other from a distance and appreciate if we can just have one.
You guys like fell out or something? Or
it's just hard.
Yeah.
It's just really hard. And I've, you know, I think when you lie on social media or you lie on TV,
right,
you're really just showing you're a coward. You know, like showing like if you're a man and you're not acknowledging you had issues.
Oh, okay.
You know,
oh, I see.
It takes more bravery to show, you know, that stuff, you know, like, yeah, like I handled my mommy issues by fucking a lot of women.
Right.
In my 20s and 30s. That's a fact. Like, people will say, "Oh, you have mommy issues." Yeah, I did. And that's how I handled it. Fucking a lot of women. What would I have done differently? I would have gone to therapy, to be honest. Someone will say, "Oh, go make money, go to the gym." I already did those two things. Okay. But what else? Well, how about my mental health? The gym cannot cure all mental health issues. Working, making money cannot cure all mental health issues. That's something I know that's popular on social media. I disagree with that. I think you can work hard, make a lot of money, go to the gym. These are good things that can help you. But there's guys that commit suicide. There's guys that are suffering from depression. They can't get out of it. They're trying. They're working out 6 days a week. They're making money. They're still suffering. Yeah, I think a mental health professional and faith can help anybody. You know, and I think if you're going through something hard, get some help. I don't think there's any shame in that. I wish I would have spoken to somebody earlier about my issues with my mom instead of fucking so many women. Don't think it really necessarily. I just delayed growing up.
Right. Well, see, the issue though with therapy nowadays is, don't you think there's so many crazy therapists?
My therapist was a gay man who was a Bernie supporter.
Yeah.
Who became a Trump supporter. And he was.
Did you make him a Trump supporter? Is that you?
No, he was already a Trump supporter. He was a Trump supporter, and I just thought he was very unconventional. He was unconventional.
Nothing against like therapy as a whole. I went to school for psychology this year, because that was part of like the volleyball program. Like when I came here, they gave me like free school with it, basically. Nice. I didn't end up finishing it because this kind of got too much for me to handle. But I just saw the women becoming therapists, and I was like, Jesus Christ, these are who is helping people? They're nuts. They're crazy.
Yeah.
So, like, how does a guy differentiate the difference between a good one and a bad one? Because I'm just saying firsthand experience. I've been in school with the people becoming therapists. God, they're nuts. They're so crazy. Like,
Yeah, no, I understand. I
and
remember
they indoctrinate you in the schools too. It's like wild.
the thing is that now education has become like something else. Like,
Crazy.
yeah, like I would say, like I graduated high school 1998.
Mhm.
So in the
I
1990s,
was born 96. Yes. 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 I was
You were born in 1996?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in high school.
Well,
Yeah, I was in high school.
November 4th, that must have been a good day for you
Yeah.
because the world was graced with me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a great day. Yeah, it was a lot of sunshine that day.
Yeah,
bro.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Someone was elected that day. It was
Yeah.
my birthday.
Yeah.
I don't know who.
Well, back in 1996, 1997, the idea of, being a man and woman having marriage, that was normal.
Yeah.
So now I can imagine how the people in 2023, my therapist was like, 60 years old, like 60 maybe, 55, 60. So in his generation, it might have been even more traditional.
Yeah.
But I could imagine the ones now in 2023.
So you
It's not the
work.
same education.
What do you mean?
Oh, just now, high school now and college now is not how it was in the 1990s. It's become very, very
Very
far.
loud. Well,
Yeah.
it started before that when they
Yeah.
subsidized education in the 60s. That's when you start to see the drop off in test scores.
Okay.
When like they made college free and then they put all the woke stuff in the colleges.
Ah, okay,
No,
okay.
it's
How you
gone
know?
way worse though. I will agree. It's like it's definitely not the same, but it did start in like the 60s,
Like,
70s.
well, I never remember in high school or middle school or elementary school seeing like, gay sex.
Oh no, it's way worse now. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like I
yes.
never remember that
Yes.
at all.
But even like sex ed as a whole, I don't know if that was around when you were in the 90s,
Yeah.
but that was like one of the things they put in schools. Because think about it, they start with sex and they add sex. Like they start with sex ed, then they add in the gay stuff.
But we didn't have gay stuff. We had sex ed,
Yeah.
but we didn't have gay stuff.
Yeah. But even the sex ed, like that's kind of part, I think anyway, that's like part of the indoctrination.
They do that now, though, right?
Like,
Yeah, in high
yeah.
school.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard that was like before even, like I heard that was in the 90s too.
Really?
I don't.
Maybe where I was, they didn't have it. No,